Hey there, I'm the Human Floyd, welcoming you to the second part of the Role-Playing Beginner's Guide to the Elder Scrolls Online. In the previous video, I introduced RP and gave you a glimpse of what it looks like. In this video, I'll be helping you create your first roleplay character. So, how do you start something like this? It's a daunting task to create a unique character from scratch that fits into ESO's continuity and setting. Personally, I always start my RP characters by deciding what race they will be and going from there. So, pick a race that interests you, not just for their looks, but their culture and themes as well. If you don't know very much about Elder Scrolls lore already, this will require some research. In fact, a very large portion of your work to create a good RP character is going to be reading and learning. Although another great way to learn lore is to simply play the test games and pay attention to the dialogue. The characters in games like ESO, Skyrim, Morrowind, and the rest often have a lot of good information to share. But you can't just wander through Skyrim hoping to learn about your chosen race. That's what the internet's for. There's a few websites you'll find very helpful while researching lore. There are links to all of these in the video description. The first, and my personal favorite, is UESP, the unofficial Elder Scrolls pages. UESP.net has a ton of lore articles on every topic we have information for. Your best bet for starting your RP character is to simply search your chosen race on UESP and read everything they have on them. The Imperial Library at imperial-library.info has collected all of the lore books in the game, as well as many interesting articles by developers of the test games and their views on lore. Then there's the Shoddycast lore series. These videos come out every other week and provide a concise overview of a specific topic each video. Watching this series is an entertaining way to build up general lore knowledge. They've already done a video for each playable race in ESO, so it would be worth watching the one for your character's race. My final recommendation is to go check out TESO-RP.com. There are detailed threads for many of the races found in the lore board there. You can ask any questions you might have in these threads, and chances are one of the knowledgeable people there will respond. There's also a topic for general lore questions, and plenty of other discussions found throughout the forum. A character sheet is a document that records some of the details of your character, such as their appearance, history, trade, etc. It's a useful tool for keeping track of the information you've created. Many role players post their character profiles on public RP websites such as TESORP.com. This is done for several reasons. Sometimes people want critique on their character so they can make him more interesting or less standard. People also post up their character sheets so that others who might know some piece of lore that they don't can tell them if there are any parts of it which contradict established canon. The final reason one would post up a character sheet would be so that other role players who read it could choose to say that their character has heard of yours. For example, a noble Altmer might be known by other noble high elves, who probably keep a close eye on potential political allies or opponents. Or perhaps a sellsword might be known for their ruthlessness or willingness to take any job. You can set up your character sheet any way you like. It can include as much or as little information as you want. I've been using a pretty popular template that I found on TESO RP, but I'll link a few different examples in the description below. I also like to keep a separate document on my computer that tells all the details I've created for my character that I don't want to post on his public profile. His secrets, private dealings, and things I would rather people find out through actually role-playing with me than by simply reading off of my character sheet. Now that you've done some research and started a character sheet, it's time to create your character. Sometimes an idea for a character comes as a spark, a sudden thought about their personality, history, or profession. Sometimes you see a really interesting character on a television show, or read about one in a novel, and base your character on that. Inspiration can come from anywhere, and you can still have a unique character to call your own if you base her on someone else's character. But then there are times when you're stuck. You want to roleplay in a particular world, but have no idea what kind of persona you want your character to have. I find that starting with a character's backstory is an excellent way to get the ball rolling. Even if you do have other ideas and details already forming in your mind, it's still a good idea to start with history. After all, everything that your character says and does is based on his experiences in the past. Creating an interesting backstory isn't always easy. Everything's been done under the sun, it seems. But honestly, I don't think a unique backstory is terribly important. After all, many of us come from very similar backgrounds in real life, but we're all quite different from one another. When figuring out my backstory, as always, I go to lore. What kind of life do the people of my chosen race usually live? What values and traditions do they have? How are their families set up, and what kind of skills do they need to learn to survive in their homeland? Homeland, that's important. Where your character was born and raised will help shape them. My main RP character in Elder Scrolls Online is an Argonian from Blackmarsh. Therefore, he was hatched among his egg brothers and egg sisters, who he grew up with in a tribe, living day to day, fishing, swimming, exploring the marshes, and practicing with a spear and bow. After all, the Dark Elf slavers are a constant problem in Blackmarsh, so he was taught from a very young age to defend himself, as most Argonians would be. So just from knowing that my character was born in Blackmarsh, I already have some details to work with. Now it's perfectly within your power as a writer to say your Argonian born in Blackmarsh had a completely different lifestyle. Maybe she was the only egg of her clutch to hatch for some terrible reason. Or she was born and raised in one of the few cities of Blackmarsh, never experiencing the tribal lifestyle that my character grew up with. Your character's birthplace shouldn't force you into adding elements you don't want into your backstory. Of course, it's always good to follow lore so that your character still belongs in the Elder Scrolls world and can relate to other player characters, or PCs. Figuring out what kind of family life and upbringing your character had will go a long way towards making them feel less like an imaginary friend and more like a real person living in a different world. You should also be aware that other PCs will ask your character questions about their backstory. After all, what do people talk about when they sit down at a campfire and are trying to get to know one another? Their past. So beyond family history and skills that your character developed in their youth, what else do you need to know? When you think about your own personal history, there are more details than you could ever really create for a roleplay character. That's why most roleplayers never stop developing their backstory. Instead, they get the basics down first, and then just add more and more over time. I think having a rough idea is all you really need to get started, but I'm just going to list some things you could use to flesh out your character if you so choose. Age. How old is your character? Are they mature for their age, or not? Different races age differently, so it's worth looking up. Abuse. Many people experience abuse in some form in the course of their life, be it verbal, physical, or mental. Was your character ever abused, and how did they get out of that situation? Did they get out of it? Birth sign. Everyone in Tamriel was born under a particular constellation. A list of these birth signs and what they mean for a character is in the description. Celebrations. There are many reasons to celebrate life. Maybe one of these celebrations is very significant to your character somehow, or they have particularly fond or foul memories from one such party. Changed beliefs. We'll get into beliefs in religion later, but it's worth mentioning that your character might have once believed in different ideals or gods or whatever at one time. If so, what caused that to change? Children. Has your character ever had children? Are they still alive? Failures. Everyone has tried, and everyone has failed. It could be big or small. Flaws. What aspect of your character's persona hinders them? Friends. Companions long gone, childhood friends back home, or even people your character is still in touch with. Perhaps the NPC sitting in the tavern is someone your character likes to drink with from time to time. Goals. What drives your character? What do they want to see happen in their life, and how are they working to achieve this? Hobbies. Not everyone has time for a hobby. Does your character? It could be as simple as taking long walks, or maybe one of their skills is also a hobby. Loss. who has died that was close to your character. Love life. Past lovers, ended romances, flings, or perhaps even a crush your character still dwells on. Peeves. What really gets on your character's nerves? Prejudices. This is most often taken from race. If you play a Nord, he probably won't think very highly of most elves. Bretons see orcs as savages, and the Altmer think they're better than everyone. Pride. What is your character proud of? Quirks. Interesting aspects of their personality. Things like a strange sense of humor or odd interests. Shame. What is your character ashamed of? Are they willing to talk about this, or do they keep it a secret? Valuables. What treasure has your character hoarded over the years? Maybe some of these items aren't actually worth a whole lot of coin, but carry sentimental value. Victories. Has your character accomplished something they consider noteworthy? Maybe your orcish blacksmith created an amazing set of armor, or your Mages Guild scholar discovered a lost tome of some importance years ago. Virtues. What qualities of your character help them succeed in life? Wounds. Old injuries sometimes never fully heal, and those that do can leave nasty scars that tell a story of their own. I could have called this step class/professions, but not everyone chooses to roleplay their class and in-game profession. For example, out of character, I'm a clother, woodworker, and alchemist, but my character is just an alchemist who has created a few staves in his time. I play a sorcerer, but he doesn't refer to himself as such, nor do I consider all of the skills I have in-game to be abilities which my character actually possesses. Deciding what skills your character has is pretty simple. Role-playing these skills in a convincing way isn't quite as simple. If your character is a blacksmith, they should understand and be able to hold a conversation about forging and all the work that goes into it. This often requires more research. Although I don't think anyone expects you to be an expert on these topics, it can color and liven up your RP if your character can talk about their profession. While we are playing in a fantasy setting, it's a good idea to keep your character's skills realistic. I prefer to limit my characters to a few areas they are very skilled at, as well as some talents they aren't very proficient at. For now, if you have a basic idea of how your character learned these skills and how proficient they are with them, that's good enough. Who taught her how to use a sword and shield? How skilled is she with these weapons, and how many years has she been practicing them? Giving your character varying degrees of skills in different areas will make her more realistic and believable. It's also fun to RP the process of learning a new skill and improving in it. This step is also a question of how your character makes a living. Do they make horseshoes, anchors, and swords to sell at market? Or to a buyer who then sells them in the city? Perhaps your character is a council member of a certain city and gets their paycheck from taxpayer gold. Or maybe they're a scavenger of Dwemer artifacts, braving the ancient ruins of the dwarves to bring back riches to sell to the highest bidder. There are endless possibilities. A character's religion is most often based on their race. Most humans worship the 8 divines, for example, whereas the Altmer have a different version of this pantheon. As always, there are exceptions to this. Some characters might not believe in any gods or divinity. We know that in the Elder Scrolls universe, these gods and goddesses do exist, and there is evidence of their influence, but not every mortal has seen this influence firsthand. Then there are those who worship the Daedric princes, such as Boethia, Nocturnal, and Malakath. Daedra worship is highly frowned upon in most societies, and these outcasts must practice in secret, or far from civilization. A character's faith can either be a huge element in your roleplay, or insignificant. It's all up to you and what kind of character you want to present. Beyond religion, a character should have some beliefs and ideals. Maybe honor is of great importance to them, or family. Official titles and ranks mean a lot to one character, while another isn't impressed by the workings of governments and organizations. Some people believe in the power of true love, others in luck. Your character might have some noble ideal of truth and justice that drives her forward in life, or maybe she believes in personal power and the accumulation of it. This is a very broad area. Like the other steps in this video, you probably won't figure everything out before you start RPing. New beliefs and ideals for your character will come to you naturally as they evolve and interact with the world. At last, you can create your roleplay character in the game. Some of you will already have a character in-game who previously didn't have a backstory or personality. Others will create a character specifically for the purpose of roleplaying. To those people I have only this suggestion. Make your appearance reflect who they are in some way. A young, proud guard should look the part, as should someone who has endured torture and grievous battle. Someone who stresses a lot will probably have more lines on their face. Or maybe your character appears younger than they are because of their carefree nature. After you feel comfortable with your character sheet, you can post it up online to see what people have to say about it. You won't always agree with their judgments and suggestions, but a fresh set of eyes can sometimes have insight into your character that you didn't notice yourself. I highly recommend asking other role players to take a look at your character and offer some constructive criticism. You can't ever improve if you aren't willing to admit that your work isn't flawless. Again, this is also a great way to check and see if your character contradicts lore somehow. If they do, I'm willing to bet someone will point it out. But the thing to remember is that no one expects you to be perfect. The most important part about role-playing is having fun. You don't have to have the perfect character before you jump into the game and start playing. There's no amount of pre-roleplay preparation you can do that will help you develop your character as much as actually role-playing them. You'll be amazed at how your character suddenly seems to develop a life of their own as you begin to play them. In the next video, I'll be giving you a closer look at what role-playing looks like and how to actually participate in it. We'll talk about the difference between being in character and out of character, and look at how to write emotes and express your character's personality in your RP. I've also created a follow-up to this video which shows an example of what creating a character might look like by following these steps. I've been the Human Floyd. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Peace.